This week, I have been involved with educating a lot of people around the topic of asbestos, and especially in asbestos and how it is handled in restorative or emergency services and mitigation practices. Asbestos is very, very important to me. I know a few people that have spent a lifetime working in unsafe conditions due to employers who do not follow the laws and do their due diligence to ensure that everyone was protected or that the hazards were managed properly. So to say this topic is important to me is an understatement. So what I'd like to do today is give you a two-part little segment. First, I want to tell you what generally the laws are as it pertains to a water or fire damage, the process that you should take to be compliant with the laws. So the first thing I want to talk about is the law. In general, you should be testing for asbestos in all structures where suspected materials will be disturbed. Suspected materials might be, not limited to, joint compound, ceiling, popcorn ceiling, fiberglass insulation, acoustical ceiling tile, lots of different caulks and finishes and mastics and adhesives and vinyl cove base, which has glue on it. The list goes on and on and on. Those are all materials that would potentially contain asbestos. Drywall itself, a sheet of gypsum board drywall, will not be suspected of asbestos, but because it is held together with joint compound, which is generally very common to have asbestos containing material, you do not want to disturb drywall that way. Wood or glass are also not that. So those are items that you could remove or get rid of to improve your ability to dry, remediate, or clean a structure after a fire or water. If you are called to a house or a business of any date, there's a huge myth of the dates. I've made endless podcasts about this, and I recommend you go back out in the description. I'll put a link to the podcast where I discuss the laws so that you are aware how OSHA law is written, that you must do your due diligence and you have to prove that there is not a hazard to your workers. Asbestos is a hazard, and houses built, structures built at any date, a year ago, last month, 2011, could have asbestos-containing materials. It is not banned to be used in America. It is only banned to be manufactured in America, but we import that. You can still buy these materials. Again, I have all of this information. So we have OSHA laws. 0% of a PEL, personal exposure level, is acceptable. It is classified by a EPA as a hazardous material. Asbestos is a hazardous material by definition, so therefore it is a hazard that must be removed, much like anything nuclear, anything that might make someone ill, sick, or cause death. So you must approach all projects that it could contain asbestos. You have a legal obligation, if you have workers, that you must provide a safe workplace. That said, it brings up the big comment is, Clark, are you telling, and I'm not the only person that teaches this, Dave Luce, Matt Marie, David Hodge, I'm taking his, at REITs, I'm taking his IICRC HST. All the information is there. By the way, let me go back. The S500 also makes mention of you must provide proof that there's no hazards, and this is a hazard. So by reading the interpretation of the standard and the laws, this is what you are supposed to, this is not an option. This is the standard. This is what's supposed to be doing. You're just like you're supposed to do anything that you follow a process. This is one of them. There's a lot of bad information. There's a lot of people who don't believe in it. So I want to move to the second part of this video. What do I do if I start to adapt and implement this process in my business? So the answer is, again, you're going to approach a fire or water or any of those, and there's lots of hazards with fires, and I'm not mentioning. You cannot disrupt any materials. You cannot start to do demolition that might, help you dry the structure faster, which is the only time you should be, or unless it's category 3 and it's, severely affected with contaminants. You will approach this project with what they call stabilization. That is an official term in the S500, and you are going to mitigate additional damage. So just bear with me. You have a home, Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. You're going to sit with them. They've had a flood. They want you to get started right away. They want you to bring in the pumps. They want you to bring in the fans, the air movers, the dehumidifiers. They want you going 100 miles an hour, because in their brain, they've just incurred a damage to their home, and it really is going to raise their anxiety. You as a professional should be responsible to say, I understand, and we're going to start our process of mitigation, but we must follow a sequence. First, you need to find out. You have to do a JHA for every single job. That's law also. If you don't know what JHA is, job hazard analysis. What hazards exist? Potentially, asbestos is a hazard with risk until you prove it's not there. You're going to possibly build containment or isolation chambers. Contain the area that's affected so that there is no access to other areas. You can do emergency services such as extraction. I would not pull carpet, because the tack strips, there could be glue underneath the carpet with the pad that has asbestos containing material in it. I would not take invasive measures. Okay? So you could easily just extract very, very well, block furniture, make safe, obviously make sure the source of the fire or the flood has been extinguished or removed, so the plumbing has been fixed. Then you can, like I said, set your isolation, place dehumidifiers for stabilization. You're going to indirectly start drying it, but you're not going to place fans, because you may already have building materials that got wet, and you're going to start aerosolizing these contaminants that you don't know are there. May or may not be, but you're assuming that they are. You do not want asbestos fibers blowing throughout. Now, you've made isolation, you've made containment. Ideally, did you seal the HVAC? You don't want to blow anything into the HVAC. I would recommend installing a HEPA air filtration unit as well. Exhaust that outside of your containment through filtration. Proper filter is applied. And then outline what the next steps are with your customer. This is what I've done. Depending on what day it is, now you should now that you know this, or you should already have a laboratory, and possibly, depending on the state you're in, the license that you have, you should develop a relationship with an industrial hygienist and a lab and all the parties needed, the IEPs that should come and take these samples. You can, in certain states, get yourself a supervisor to a point where you can legally take the samples and take those to the lab yourself. You can possibly have the lab results, maybe if you got them early enough in the morning, the same day, but at least the next day. If it's on the weekend and it's not until Monday, it might be Monday. If you live in a remote area where there's not a lab, you're going to need to send those somewhere. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Obviously, you would like it to be sooner than anything, but you can't rush this. If you find a way to make it quicker, make it quicker. But you have dehumidifiers running, and those may run for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Advise the parties, advise the customer that you have a daily rate for your dehumidifier and your air scrubber, and that you are charging for that every day. You can't not place the dehumidifiers, because then they have the risk of growing mold. Mold may or may not be a covered peril in their policy. And then the mold that's grown would be an exclusion, and they could possibly not have the ability to use insurance proceeds to reimburse them for this work that you're doing, which that's what you're going to do. You're not billing the insurance company, you're billing the customer. But they're going to use insurance proceeds to reimburse themselves because they're going to pay you to save their home and their materials and their building, their construction, their contents and whatnot. But this is the first step. You must ensure that there's no asbestos or other lead-based paint or something like that there. You're going to have the results, the samples come in. If they come in and everything's fine and they're negative for any trace, proceed. Proceed as you would. Now the job begins, the next phase. If it's hot, as they call it, or if it shows presence of asbestos, you need to have an asbestos abatement contractor come in and address the abatement of the material needed to be removed for you to do the job that you need to do. They'll come in, they'll have their own processes, and they'll have to clear it, they'll have to file a permit. This will extend your job. What I'm telling you is the law, and it's the best practices for the professionalism that we have. The question that most of you are asking is, what is the insurance going to say? Well, I clearly don't know what they're going to say, but they're probably not going to know the laws because that's not their job. They are not professionals at restoration or building sciences or remediation. They are insurance professionals. They know how to evaluate property. They know how to look, and I'll say evaluate property of their customers, reduce the price, depreciate the value, look at what should and should not be covered in the policy, read the policy. Those are their jobs. They do the things that you do not do. You are the building professional. Your insurance company is not. And the reason, again, I say that is because they are not going to understand the law, and they're probably going to tell you you're wrong. But you're going to find the right information. You're going to watch my podcast that I'm going to put in the link. I will have the assets and resources that are downloadable, and I expect you to have those for every customer and every interaction with every job you do. Have those for them and you have them for yourself. If they are going to face friction on getting reimbursed, you need to provide them with the information from you as a professional that now is competent, that knows what the laws are. You're going to provide them with the documentation so that they can justify the laws with them. Now, if they continue to push back and they say we have another vendor, another restorer, another company that doesn't do the testing, that doesn't do all of what you're doing, doesn't follow all these, they're going to consider them expensive, crazy, gouging or whatever. All you need to do is have a very simple conversation with your customer and say, so if I understand you right, you're going to allow someone to come in that breaks the law, exposes their employees to potentially having asbestos. I don't know if you have asbestos or not. I mean, honestly, I hope you don't, because that only is going to be more expensive, more time, and a little more of a burden in your life. I hope it's clear, but it doesn't change the fact that I can't do the work. So you're going to have a conversation with the customer saying, your insurance company is telling you they're not concerned about the exposure to your property and to your house of possibly asbestos going everywhere, by the way, which is regulated and called a harmful material, just like anything else would be. Your insurance company is wanting to find another contractor because it's cheaper to have someone else come in here. And so now you're going to have a contractor that's not following the laws or they're ignoring them, and you're going to begin a relationship and trust people in your home that are working off of bad information or trying to be deceptive. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, how would you like me to proceed? Because that's not who we are, and I don't think that's who you want in your house. What would you like to do? Well, my insurance company won't let me. No, excuse me. Your insurance company works for you, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner or business owner. I want to make sure you know that. They work for you. They cannot demand that someone break the law into your house and expose you. As a company that manages risk, they can't put you in more risk. So maybe you need to speak to a supervisor, maybe the Department of Insurance or whatnot. These are the conversations. I've just given you a real quick overview of what the laws were and what I recommend you do to prepare your customer for this series of processes. If you need to know more about how to handle this, we coach on this and talk about it all the time. Reach out to me at www.restorationadvisors.com, and someone from our team will speak to you and discuss this topic, or maybe a whole list of other things that you might just find that you would like to have someone on your team that knows how to handle every one of these and help you grow, be more successful so that you can help more people with the great work that you do. I hope this session was valuable to you. I want to make sure that our industry is safe and that we represent ourselves in the right light. Take care and have a good day.